Hello, I'm Nadia Kalman from Words Without Borders campus, and you're listening to So Booking Cool with Jewel B.
Welcome to So Booking Cool. I'm Jewel B. Today's guest is the editor and curriculum designer for Words Without Borders. She is the author of the novel, The Cosmopolitans, and she is an education consultant. She is Nadia Kalman. Nadia, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, good. I'm glad. I'm so glad for us to chat today. Recently, you hosted the Get Teens Reading Globally training, which I attended, and it was so great. It was so educational, no pun intended. But how long has it been in the making, would you say, and how do you think things turned out?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words about the training. Those events are really about the people who attend and their ideas, and yeah, that day was just great. So the website has been in the making for maybe a decade. It was an idea at the organization long before they hired me to implement it. It was one of those things that kept kicking around. Words Without Borders is a magazine that's been in existence now for maybe 14 years, and they have a huge archive of world literature and also an audience composed in part of educators who wanted to teach the literature but felt like they didn't have enough context, enough information about the culture and the history that informed the work to really present it effectively. And so that's where the site that we designed came in. It's Words Without Borders Campus, and it has a selection of literature that's appropriate for students in grades 6 and up, all the way through early college. And we publish the literature alongside contextual information that's as interesting and multimodal as we can find. So if you read a poem that's been inspired by some music, you'll get some music clips next to that poem. Artwork that relates to the topics in the literature. Maps, photo essays, interviews with authors, interviews with translators, and then some ideas for how to teach or how to present the work. And a playlist of further suggestions, so if you get really interested in a particular topic or a writer, you can find more places to read and find out about that.
Wow. Yeah, Words Without Borders, you guys have so much going on. Who would you say you're most trying to reach? Would you say it's students, teachers, writers, creatives? What would you say, Nadia?
Words Without Borders campus, our audience is educators, and that, of course, includes after-school educators and librarians and students. So it's made so that you can bring it to your students. You can just have them pull up the literature on the website, or if you want, you can also print out the literature, print out an additional resource or two, and bring it to the class that way.
What would you say is your favorite thing about working at Words Without Borders?
I think that it's sort of hard in our professional landscape in the education space to be able to get the time to put something together that feels like it meets, like something that I would want to use if I were back in the classroom, something that has been thought out enough that I would want to use it. There are a lot of educational materials that are made sort of quickly, and I've seen it. I mean, I've worked as a freelancer and also in a publishing house where you just need to turn stuff over really, really quickly. And so, like, the first activities you think of, you type up, and then they go right to graphic design, and then they're published really quickly after that. And because the online space is a little bit more flexible than the print publishing space, we can give additional time to works where we come up with something interesting, like we're able to contact the translator, but the translator won't be able to be interviewed for another month, like we can work around those schedules to make sure that our materials are of a high quality.
Nadia, how did you begin your career?
I was a teacher as a volunteer in an organization called Literacy Volunteers from the time I was in high school. And then when I was in college, I taught part-time in an after-school summer program and then in some public schools in the city in my last year. And then after I graduated from college, I taught for a year in a school that was sort of like a public-private mix. And then I went into curriculum design and sort of alternated back and forth between teaching and bigger like curriculum and policy work for the next 10 years or so.
Wow. So what would you say is similar about teaching and designing a curriculum? Are there any similarities at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot. I mean, you probably know well from your after-school experience that a curriculum is only as good as the day that you present a lesson to a particular group of students. So as a teacher, even if you're given a curriculum to execute, you have to modify it for your group, for their interests, for their needs, for their strengths, for their challenges, and so I think both of those jobs are curriculum design jobs, and I think they both have different challenges. I think that in designing curriculum, I have to sort of go back and remember what it was like to be a teacher or talk to current teachers and get their feedback. And when I was a teacher, I was very close to it all, so I often didn't have time to do the kind of research that I can do now as a curriculum developer. Like I can read a reference to a Japanese movie and a story from Japan and then take the time to follow that thread and ideally eventually end up with an English language clip of that movie that will really bring home something in the story for students. And when I was a teacher, I just would never have that kind of time. I would have so many other things to do.
Nadia, why is it so important for children to be exposed to literature from other parts of the world?
Well, of course, I've thought about this question a lot. As an immigrant myself, I feel quite strongly that a lot of our problems, our social problems, come from a failure to empathize with people whose backgrounds are different from ours or who may seem different from ourselves. I think that it's vital that we learn to understand each other and that students learn to understand their global peers, because today's generation of young people has a couple of very serious tasks ahead of it, and I think that to help young adults forge those kinds of connections across cultures is really, really important. And also, young adults are motivated by the opportunity to learn more about people from other parts of the world and to learn more about their own cultural backgrounds. So in addition to the social and emotional benefits of this literature, it's motivating. It wakes up students who may not have previously been very interested in reading.
How soon should we get students engaged in learning about people from other parts of the world and work from other parts of the world?
I think, starting from pre-K, you can do it. I think that sometimes, I have limited experience in the younger grades, but from what I've seen, sometimes that learning about other cultures in the younger grades gets sort of like cutified, so that you think that the way that a culture that a very internally diverse set of cultures, for example, within Mexico gets taught is you think that you're going to go to Mexico and everyone's going to be like wearing a sombrero or something, or, you know, singing folk music, and it's sort of like it gives the wrong impression, and it sort of flattens the richness of other cultures.
Mm.
But I think that there are, well, maybe not easy, but there are very workable ways to get around that. And one of the ways that I would suggest is to, if you have students whose home cultures are from a place that you're looking at, involve their families in coming into the school and sharing what that culture is like for them from the inside instead of from the outside, through like some kind of worksheet that a teacher might find online, or like a coloring book or something like that. It's the best is always to hear from people who are a part of that culture.
And speaking of culture, Nadia, as I mentioned in the intro, you are an author. You wrote The Cosmopolitans, which I understand is it loosely based off of your life and some of your experiences?
I think you could say that it's based on some family stories and some friends' stories. It's not really loosely based on my life, but it's
Okay.
definitely based on the people I grew up with and, you know, various things that happened to us, and it's definitely a story of Jewish people from the former Soviet Union, which is also what I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so tell us more about, you know, writing the book, the publishing process, and your thoughts to the response to The Cosmopolitans. I know a lot of people have enjoyed it, and they talked about how much they enjoyed the humor in the book, too.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
So, let's see. You had asked first about the experience of writing it, is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I wrote it really quickly, and it's about three sisters and their marriages, and they all get married sort of quickly. And then, have you ever heard that phrase, marry in haste, repent at leisure?
It sounds familiar, but...
Well, it's sort of like if you marry really quickly, then you'll have a long time to sit around and regret it. And in a way, that's what happens to at least one of the girls in the book, and that's sort of what writing the book was like for me, because I wrote it really quickly, and then I looked at what I had, and it was really, really really rough. So then I had to go back and edit it, and editing it took a couple of years past the time when I had finished a draft. So, yeah, it was an interesting process, and it was the first novel that I wrote, so it was, I think, a good way to learn about what it takes to write a novel. And then in terms of publishing, I had an agent, perhaps not the best one, I'm not sure. A lot of the bigger publishers didn't want it because they said that it's from multiple points of view, and that seemed to be difficult. Or, like, one of them said that they were already publishing a novel by an immigrant from the former Soviet Union, so they couldn't publish two of them. And I feel like that probably happens to a lot of immigrant writers or writers from other communities that are not like standard American, has been there for a long time, standard, yeah, just for a lot of communities that are considered like marginalized or marginal. So I thought that was weird. Like, you can have a whole bunch of books by like white guys, but you could only have one book by someone from this part of the world. Anyway, so then I contacted independent publishers on my own, and Livingston Press is a university press. They were very good to me, and I had a really good experience with them, and you know, I'm happy with the way that they marketed the book, and they had limited resources, but I think they used them really strategically. So I would recommend independent publishers to people too.
I'm so glad that you were able to find a home for your book that really seemed to get it and understand it, Nadia.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, of course. What is your advice for any writers who might be facing that situation?
Well, especially as a woman writer, I was sort of surprised. I spoke to a lot of people who said that a lot of women who said that in my position they would have just given up after being turned down by big publishers. And I think that might be sort of something that women are taught to do, to sort of like gracefully bow out when they don't have initial success. And I would counsel people not to do that, not to give up too early. My agent gave up on the book, but I didn't, and things worked out for me, and I'm really happy they did. And I don't, like, it was definitely hard to be mailing it out by myself, but it wasn't impossible. And I think people might think that it's more difficult than it really is.
Wow. You also created a video for TED Ed. I have to ask you about this. 3 antisocial skills to improve your writing. Nadia, tell us about it. I think that's a brilliant idea, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. So that was, I was on a panel of writers, and there was speaking, and there was someone from TED Ed there, and he asked if we would be interested in doing a video, and so I scripted something. I guess I remembered back to when I was going to school, and I was one of those kids who always has their head in a book, and I think the school social worker called me antisocial or something like that. And as I've gotten older and become a teacher, and a writer, and seen all different kinds of habits associated with writing, I think that sometimes being antisocial is helpful. Being a listener is really helpful. Being an observer is helpful. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, especially as it goes into writing dialogue, which is something that I've always been interested in.
Wow. All right. Nadia Kalman, everyone. Nadia, thanks so much for talking to So Booking Cool today. It was a pleasure. I would love to talk to you again in the future. And by the way, you have to let us know how people can keep up with you, any upcoming projects or events that we should know about.
If people go to www.campus.org, that's the Words Without Borders campus website. You can find me there. It's really easy to contact me from the website. I'm also on Facebook, just under my name, Nadia Kalman.
All right. Okay. So I should have said Words Without Borders campus. I should have added the campus.
Oh,
earlier.
Yeah, that's okay. The organization is Words Without Borders, and I work on the campus project.
Okay. One more question. Anything that you're currently reading or, looking to read that you're excited about?
Let me see. Right at the moment, I'm reading George Eliot's Notes on Clerical Life, I think it's called. So George Eliot is the author of Middlemarch, which I really liked, one of the Victorian writers. And this book, even though it has a title that's a little bit boring and that I can't completely remember, is really funny and interesting and sharp. And so I would recommend it.
Thank you for the recommendation. Thank you, Nadia. And thank you to all the listeners. Until next time, So Booking Cool.
Hello, I'm Nadia Kalman from Words Without Borders campus, and you're listening to So Booking Cool with Jewel B.